Hello everyone. In the second episode of Azure Data Factory tutorial, I'll show you how to incrementally load data after an initial full data load. Okay, let's get started. Alrighty, just like the first episode, we have a requirement here. I go through the requirement quickly. We have a student's data stored in an Azure SQL Server database, and we want to move data incrementally to a blob storage with CSV format. So I just highlighted the incrementally word here. This is the main focus of this part of the video that I want to just elaborate on that. So just want to give you a little bit more context about what that means and understand the requirement first, then we go to the implementation phase. As you see, we have student data in a SQL Server table here, and we want to just move it to our sink, which is a CSV format file in a blob storage. So the expectation here is when you run the pipeline for the first time, a CSV file should be created in the blob storage containing all the records that you've got in the SQL Server database table. Uh, if you add a new record to that table, what is expected here is if you run the pipeline again for the second time, it's going to create a new file containing only the added record to the database table, not all the records again. So this is what we call it loading data incrementally or delta data loading. This is the terminology that you will hear about that a lot when you are working with data in data engineering space. For loading data incrementally, we use a technique called watermark. If you look at the source that we have here, we added a column for the students table. It's a timestamp column, and every time we insert a new row to that table, we just put the current date and time in it. If we update a row there, we just update that value with the current date and time. So if we just run the pipeline for the first time, it's going to just grab all the records and move it across to our target. And what we do here, we mark the last timestamp that we move data across to the target. So in this case, 1st of Jan 2025, 8:50 p.m. is marked. And if you add a new record to this table, the timestamp definitely would be greater than that timestamp. So it's, for example, 10:01 p.m. same day. And if you run the pipeline for the second time, this time we say load all the data that we've got in that table greater than the previous mark that we have. And this way, only the inserted records will move across to the target. In this case, we only had one record. So you see that the other sides, we have a file with one record. And what we need to do after running the pipeline as a part of the pipeline task, we need to just update our watermark and we say, this is the last timestamp that data is moved across. And we use the same logic for the pipeline to just load data incrementally. Let's dive into this with a little bit of more technical details. When you want to implement watermarks, the first step is adding a timestamp column to your data source. So we just spoke about it earlier. The second step is creating a table for storing the watermark. You can have two columns, watermark name and watermark value. The watermark name is usually the name of a table that you want to just create watermark on that. So if you have multiple table and you want to watermark multiple tables, then you can use the same watermark table for that purpose. So in this case, we are creating watermarks for a students table. So the watermark name is students, If you have more tables that you want to do the same thing for that, like teachers, etc., you can just add them to this table and use the same logic. The watermark value will have an initial value which should be less than all of the possible values that you think you might have in your data. In this case, I've just populated that with 1st of Jan 2000. And we are sure that because it's an old date, all of the data that we're going to have in the students table is greater than that initial value. That's the second step. Then if you run your pipeline for the first time, we need to calculate two different values in our pipeline. The first value is the new watermark value, and the second one is the current watermark value. The current watermark value is easy. It's coming from the watermark table. So as you can see, uh, it's 1st of Jan 2000 for this first run. And the new watermark value is always the maximum value of the last modified timestamp column. In this case, it's 1st of Jan 8:50 p.m. That I put it here. So we calculate these two values first. Then we move all the records from the student table between those two date and time. So we say everything greater than current watermark value, which is 1st of Jan 2000, and it should be less than or equal the new watermark value, which is the maximum value that we have here for the last record. And lastly, what we need to do after creating the CSV file, we need to just update the watermark value with a new watermark value. So this is what happens. And we put 1st of Jan 2025, 8:50 p.m. In the watermark table. So we know that the last time that the pipelines run, we just move data up to this timestamp. If we run the pipeline for the second time, the same logic will happen. But let's assume that we've added a new record to our source table. And definitely the timestamp would be greater than the last one that we had earlier. Uh, we run the pipeline for the second time, and this time the new watermark value would be the maximum of this date and time. This time it gets populated with 10:01 p.m. And the current watermark value is coming from watermark table, which is 8:50 p.m. same day. When we say that move all records between these two date and time, uh, the only record that's included in our query result is this latest record. So these records moved across. And lastly, we need to update the watermark value with the new watermark value. So this 10:01 p.m. is updated in the watermark table. That's how it works when we want to implement watermark. Okay, let's implement this using ADF. I'm using the SQL Server database that we set up in the first episode of this tutorial. If you want to uh, know more details about how we set up this database, please refer to the first part of this tutorial. But here we use the same SQL Server database to set up our tables here. So I go to the query editor and create our students table. So as you can see, I just added last modified timestamp to our table, and I'm going to just run this query. Query was successful. We need some data in this table as well. So just create 3 records for now we need. We need to highlight the insert part only. So run that. Now it's successful. And just quickly select rows from this table to see what is the result. Yeah, we've got 3 records in it, and we've got our timestamp in the last modified timestamp column as well. Next step, we create our watermark table. So name the table watermark. It has 2 columns, watermark name and watermark value. Uh, Run this command to create the table for us. Okay, it was successful. Then I need an initial value for that. As we discussed this earlier, so I insert the initial value for the student table, and let's just select that row from the watermark table to make sure that everything's fine. Yep, as you can see, watermark name is students, and the value is 1st of Jan 2000. Excellent. And if we just refresh here, you see that we created 2 tables. One table is a student, another one is watermark. Okay, we are good with the SQL Server setup. We go to the next part. The next step is setting up the target of our pipeline. We created a storage account in first part. Uh, Here we use the same storage account, and we need a blob storage container to store the CSV file here in this storage account. So I go to the created a storage account, go to a storage browser, blob container. We have a container here called my target that we created in the first episode, and it's an empty container. So it's ready. We can create our CSV files here. Okay, we're done with this part as well. Uh, Next step, we go to ADF and we start setting up our pipeline. We go to ADF, and from the left pane, go to Outer. In the pipeline section, click on 3 dots and click New Pipeline. From the right pane, give it a name, Incremental Copy Pipeline, and click on Properties to hide it. I come back to our slide for a sec. In our pipeline, the first step that we need to do is calculating the maximum value of the last modified timestamp column from the student table. So as a first step, we do this in our pipeline in ADF. To achieve this, from general section, we drag and drop a lookup activity here and give that lookup activity a name. Go to settings. We need to create a source dataset for that. Click on new. Our source is the Azure SQL database. Highlight that, continue. Give that a name. I call it a student dataset. We need to create a link service for that, which, as we spoke earlier, link service is a connection string, basically. We give our link service a name, Azure SQL Database Link Service. For integration runtime, choose auto resolve because it's a cloud-to-cloud connection. From Azure subscription list, select your subscription. Also select your server name and your database, and put in your username and password for SQL Server authentication. And then click on test connection here. Connection successful. Click on create. Gets created. Now from table name dropdown, select a students table because we want to read data from a students table, and click on OK. Then choose query here and write your query for calculating the maximum value of that timestamp column here. So just put that here, select max last modified timestamp as a new watermark value from a student's table. So if you click on edit, it goes to a editor with a better formatting and coloring, so it's easier to work with now. But it's basically a SQL command for calculating the maximum value for that column. Make sure that you tick this first row only. It means that if this query is returning multiple rows, which action should be taken by the ADF. So in this case, it never happens because we have a aggregation operator here and you always return one value, but just in case, just select this first row only. You can click on preview data and make sure that it's working fine. So if you look at the return value, it's 1st of Jan 2025 and 2050. We can go to the query editor in SQL Server and validate this value. If you look at the last modified timestamp values, this is the maximum value, which is the greatest one in this table. So it works fine. Go back to ADF, close this. We can validate our work so far. So click on validate. You see that it is validated. Okay, we go to the next bit, which is getting the current watermark value. So we need to read the watermark value from watermark table for the students table. We need another lookup activity to achieve this. So I drag and drop another lookup activity here into our designer surface. Give it a name. Look up old watermark activity. Go to setting, and we can use the new button to create another data set. Quickly do the same step. Call it watermark data set. And we can use the same link service that we created earlier. But in the table name area, this time we choose watermark table. Click on OK. We choose query here and we put this query. We select the watermark value from watermark table and our condition is watermark name should be a students. So if we just preview data, we see that 1st of Jan 2000 is coming up as a result. Close this one. Validate our job so far. Everything's fine. Go back to a slide again. Next step is moving all the students record where last modified timestamp is greater than the current watermark that we calculated and is less than or equal the new watermark value. So in previous steps, we calculated the new watermark value and current watermark value in the pipeline. And now we use these values to just move the records that we are after. We go back to ADF Studio. We need a copy activity for copying data. So we go to move and transform and drag and drop a copy data activity here. Uh, First of all, we just click on the on success or green tick of first lookup and we connect it to the copy data task that we just copied. And we do the same for the second lookup as well. So what this means is this copy data is dependent on these two tasks. So once these two are completed, then the copy data task will be run because we need the value of these lookups in the copy data activity. Okay, we click on copy data activity, we give it a name, call it incremental copy activity. Go to source, and from drop down, we choose our student dataset because we want to read data from a student dataset. Choose query. In query, I click in edit so we can see the query better here. So this is a query that we need to have it here. Uh, we are selecting everything from the students table. And our condition here is, or our where clause, we say that last modified timestamp should be greater than the watermark value that we calculated from first lookup activity. So this is how we just refer to the lookup activity. So we say activity, and in the quotation, we just use the activity name. Then we say in its output, we say we want its first row, and what is the field name that we are after, because in our query we said um, the watermark value is selected, so the field name is watermark value. I mean, in the lookup activity, this is the field name that we are returning. And the other condition that we've got is using the second activity that we created, the lookup activity. We are referring to that, which is lookup new watermark activity. And we use the same naming conventions, and we use new watermark value, which is the alias name in the select query that we wrote earlier. So we click on OK. We go to sync, and we create a new sync for that. It's the Azure Blob Storage. And we're going to create a CSV file. We give it a name, a students delta dataset. We create a new link service for that. Give it a name, Azure Blob Storage link service, and we choose our subscription here and select the storage account that we created earlier. Test connection successful. Create, gets created. Click on browse, select my target, click OK. And in file name, I want to put this. So I put it in the notepad first, so you can see that better. We use concat function, concatenating different strings together. So the first part is giving us the run ID for the pipeline. So every time that you run your pipeline, it's got a run ID, which is a unique value. So you can use that for naming your file. You make sure that it is unique and it's not going to overwrite another files. And then we concatenate that with .csv, which is our file extension. So I'm going to put this in the file name, copy that, put it here, and then click on OK. We choose none for import schema for now, and click on OK again. It gets created. Our copy behavior, we want to just use preserve hierarchy, and we validate our work so far. Pipeline's been validated. Excellent. Publish our work so far, so make sure that we're not going to lose anything. So just click on publish all. This is our pending changes, which is fine. So click on publish. Publish completed. Come back to the slide. The last steps left is updating the watermark value in the watermark table with the new watermark that's been calculated in the lookup tasks. So this is the last step that we need to do in our pipeline. The easiest way to achieve this is creating a stored procedure in SQL Server for updating the watermark table with the new values, and then call this stored procedure from the data pipeline. So I have a script here to create that stored procedure. As you can see, we just give it a name. This is our stored procedure name. And we passed two parameters to that. The first one is the watermark name. The second one is the watermark value. And we just use the update SQL command to update the watermark table. And we say that set the watermark value in this table to this parameter value, the watermark value that is passed to this procedure. And our condition is where watermark names equal watermark name equals watermark name parameter. So I'm going to just run this and make sure that that user stop procedure gets created here. So I refresh that and we see that it's created here. We go to the data pipeline now and call this stop procedure. In ADF Studio, in general section in activities pane, drag and drop the stored procedure activity here. Give that activity a name and go to settings. Choose your linked service for SQL Server, which is so this one that we created earlier. You can just test your connection here, make sure you can connect to that database. And then from the drop down, you see that the stored procedure that we created earlier is populated here. So we select that, and in the stored procedure parameter, we click on import. So it brings up the list of parameters that we need to provide value for them. So the watermark name would be a students, and the watermark value should be the output of this lookup task, which is calculating the new watermark value. So the way that we call that, we just use @ curly brace open and curly brace close. You can just do it here, it's easier. And then inside the curly brace, we say activity bracket, and then we choose quotation, and inside the quotation, we give our activity name. If you put a dot here, say in its output, we are after first row, and then we want to have the new watermark value field. As you can see, it's complaining that this activity cannot be referenced here. The reason is I haven't just connected this activity to our copy data activity. So we need to say this on success goes to a stored procedure call. So once the copy data is successful, it goes to the stored procedure, and now see that the error is gone. And also we need to set the type of this parameter, which is a date time parameter. Validate our changes to make sure that everything's fine. And we can just publish it now. Publish all. This is our pending changes. Click on publish. Publishing completed. Now we can just test our pipeline. I'm going to run the pipeline by clicking the debug button here. But before that, just quickly go to SQL Server database. This is the 3 rows that we have here. So if I run the pipeline, I expect a CSV file gets created in the Azure Blob Storage, and these 3 records should be in that CSV file. Also, if I look at the watermark table, I expect that this watermark value gets updated with the maximum value that we've got in the student table. So currently it's 1st of Jan 2000. After running the pipeline, it should be changed to 1st of Jan 2025, and it's 8:50 p.m. Okay, let's run the pipeline and see how it goes. Click on debug. As you can see, these two lookup tasks are run at the same time. They are concurrent. And once both of them are completed, then the next task, which is the copy data task, is run because that's the sequential activity after those two. And also the stored procedure call is a sequential one. So the lookups are completed. Now it goes to the copy data task. And once it's done, then it goes to the next step, which is calling the stored procedure for updating the watermark value. So you can have concurrent activities as well as sequential activities based on your arrangement here and your orchestration. Okay, the pipeline is successful. Before going to the blob storage to check the result and to the SQL Server, I'm going to show you some stuff here in this screen. So for each of these activities, you can check the input and output. If you have a problem with the data or there is a bug, you can just investigate your problem. So if you hover your mouse here on each of these row, uh, there is an input and output button here. The input one shows you what is the query that you've written here, and it's gonna run. In this case, it's getting the maximum of timestamp. And if you check the output for this lookup task, you see that output of that is this value. It's 1st of Jan 2050. And this is the hierarchy that we use for accessing this data. If you remember, output dot first row dot this field name. So this is how we just access that. For the other lookup activity, again, you can check your query here and you can check the output as well. So as you can see, the watermark value from the watermark tables right here, which is 1st of Jan 2000. And one last thing, for the stored procedure activity, if you check the input, you see that the parameter values are student for the watermark name, and it's 1st of Jan 25, 2050 for the watermark value. So this is as expected. We go to SQL Server Query Editor, and we check the watermark table to see what is the value there. So as you can see, it's updated to 1st of Jan 25, 2050. We go to our storage account in containers in my target. As you see, a blob storage is created here, and the blob name is the run ID GUID basically. So if we go back to ADF, you see that this run ID is shown here, and it's a pipeline run ID. And as I said earlier, it's a unique value for each run that you have for your pipeline. So we use that value for the file name. If I open the file and go to edit, we see all three records been moved here to the CSV file as expected. You can use preview mode. Okay, we verified that the first one was successful. So I go to ADF and we go to monitor, and we see that same data comes up here. If you go back to here, so we can just run the pipeline again. I'm going to run the pipeline for the second time, but before that, I go to the query editor window and insert a new row to our students table. Highlight the row, run the query, and I run this one to see that the new row has been inserted. So I added a new row which is this row, and the timestamp is 2201, and it's for the same date, 1st of Jan 2025. So if I run a pipeline, this time I expect a new CSV file in the blob storage, and it should only contain this last record for us. So let's see how it goes. Go back to the ADF, add trigger, and trigger now. Okay, can go to monitor and check the progress of the pipeline run. So as you can see, it's in progress. It succeeded. If now we go to our database and check the watermark table, we should see this value 2201 in the watermark value column. So let's run that. Yep, it's updated properly. Now we go to blob storage and refresh here. You see that a new file is being created. And if I check the content, we should see only the last row there. And here you go. This is only the last row that we inserted recently. Excellent. We managed to meet the requirement. As an exercise, you can just implement that for multiple tables. Uh, like you have a students table, you can add a teachers table as well, and then create a watermark for that. You can use the same table. You just need one more row in there for storing the teacher's watermark value. And then in your pipeline, you just need to load the watermark from watermark table for the teachers as well, and just copy data. So it's a good exercise. If you are keen to practice more, you can just do that on your own. We wrap up this session here. Thanks for watching the video. If you think this video was valuable, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and write your comments for us. Uh, I'll see you soon with more exciting content. Thank you.